and scurrying. Born August 11, 1967 in Newark, New Jersey, Joe Rogan was raised in what many would consider a somewhat broken home. His father, Joseph Sr., was a Hall of Fame domestic abuser and abandoned his son at the age of 7 following the divorce from his mother 2 years prior. At the age of 14, Joe decided to follow in his father's violent footsteps, having developed a keen interest in martial arts. He initially took up karate before later competing more professionally in taekwondo tournaments. Joe's proficiency in repeatedly kicking other kids in the head saw him win a US championship as a 19-year-old lightweight, before holding the Massachusetts State Championship for 4 consecutive years. Tragically, the micro-combatant was forced to retire from competition at the age of 21, following a series of explosive headaches. Meanwhile, having his swollen head continually pummeled for sport was not in the least bit conducive for his academic pursuits, with Joe dropping out of the University of Massachusetts prior to graduation. Considering education a pointless endeavour, Joe swapped dojos for dick jokes after watching Flammable Sambo Richard Pryor's film live on the Sunset Strip.
You ever be watching something on television with a girl, something really hot, and you wind up letting some words sneak through the filter and you say exactly what you're thinking? I was watching this Madonna video where she crawls across the floor and she licks milk out of a bowl like a cat. Hello.
Having relocated to New York, the barbarous pothead would share his time between teaching his unique brand of Joe Kwando and scurrying his tiny feet around comedy clubs for stage time. Rogan was soon approached by talent manager Jeff Sussman following a set at a Boston comedy club. With new representation came fresh opportunity, and after 6 years of butting his roided forehead against the wall, the first sign of success was just around the corner. In 1994, a fledgling Joe would appear on MTV's confusingly named Half-Hour Comedy Hour, with a look akin to a Fred Durst bobblehead.
It's like the Mecca for bimbos is marriage, right? It's the promised land, right? It's so true. I can't even hear the word marriage. It comes out of a girl's mouth, my brain just shuts off. You know, it's like, marriage, click. Every word after marriage is...
The appearance prompted further attention for the TRT addict, and with it a development deal with Disney resulting in Joe's first major acting role in Fox's steaming puddle of televisual piss, Hardball. Fortunately for the bestial homunculus, the show was simply a blip in what would become a more than respectable career in television. The NBC sitcom, News Radio, would represent a much improved platform to stretch his stubby little legs. The show was both well written and produced, and despite finding himself surrounded with talent such as Andy Dick, Stephen Root and John Lovitz, Joe did well not to stick out like a sore... never mind.
12,
so cool.
11, 10, I got this garbage. 9, 8.
Tragically, Joe's passion for character acting soon went the way of former co-star and bullet magnate Phil Hartman. Having spent years imploring his close friend to divorce his demented wife, Rogan's pleas were largely ignored. However, a marital separation of sorts did eventually take place, following a fatal gunshot wound courtesy of aging wife Bryn Crazy Eyes Hartman. #BelieveAllWomen. Joe was devastated and took a brief hiatus from stand-up comedy as a result.
It was ugly, and I tried to get him to divorce her several times, and he was terrified of losing his image, terrified of losing money. I mean, he just didn't want to be a divorced Hollywood bachelor guy. His image was the family guy.
Yeah.
Joe's growing interest in jiu-jitsu saw the receding beefcake land a job as a backstage and post-fight interviewer for the Ultimate Fighting Championship. And after becoming friendly with testicle-headed President Dana White following new ownership of the franchise, Joe would soon become the voice of UFC coverage as an outspoken and energetic co-commentator.
Thanks, Bruce. I'm back here right now backstage. I'll be interviewing the fighters as they come out of the octagon, and I'll also be previewing the fights, the final fights in each weight division. I'll be talking to the fighters. We'll find out who's injured, who's going to be able to continue, and who's going to go in if we need an alternate.
Such was Rogan's insatiable hunger to see hordes of scantily clad muscle men grapple that he even agreed to cover his first 15 fights free of charge before finally accepting payment. And the closeted runt's passion was duly rewarded, winning the Wrestling Observer Newsletter Award for Best Television Announcer twice, and being named MMA Personality of the Year 4 times by the World MMA Awards.
To kick things off, I'd like to introduce the distinguished executives who we have available to make today's historic announcement and answer your questions.
Short black trunks for Jones, white trunks for Guzman.
Or black guy Jones, white guy Guzman.
That was said by Joe Rogan.
Joe's comedy career was at this point ticking along rather nicely, with his debut album I'm Gonna Be Dead Someday receiving regular praise on The Howard Stern Show. The album would go on to be mass downloaded from the P2P file sharing service, Napster.
You ever watch like wild animals fucking on the Discovery Channel and you go, I wish I didn't have a language. So fucking good, so fucking pure.
Defying the valid stereotype that stoners are nothing more than lazy drains on society with as much drive as a sloth on smack, Joe continued to take on project after project. In 2001, he was encouraged by Sussman to accept a role hosting NBC's gross-out game show, Fear Factor. The show involved a series of juvenile stunts and outlandish dares designed to entertain throngs of dead-brained edgelords. Still, the show ran for 6 seasons and served to bolster Rogan's mass market appeal quite significantly.
But if you add in hundreds of snakes and mass hysteria, then you have something.
Claire, you are a savage! Congratulations! Wow! God! Oh!
Joe's meat-headed magnetism in the eyes of like-minded alphas was once again exploited by TV executives, with Rogan teaming up with disheveled drunk Doug Stanhope in MTV's The Man Show. The series sat somewhere between celebrating and lampooning the stereotypical boorish nature of hypermasculinity. The show came off as more of a try-hard approach to derivative macho tropes, aimed primarily at future Gas Digital subscribers.
Women look at prostitutes like scabs crossing a picket line. It blows the scam. Because prostitutes are only in it for $100, but married women are in it for 50% of the gross. They're looking at the long con.
After brief discussion of a potential bout with tax-evading vampire slayer Wesley Snipes, in hopes of alleviating the jail-bound actor of his financial shitstorm, Rogan again returned to stand-up comedy, with specials such as 2006's memorably named Joe Rogan Live, and the following year's Islamophobic spectacular, Shiny Happy Jihad.
Everybody's like, is it fun? I'm like, oh, it's kind of retarded, but whatever, it's gonna be canceled immediately. 4 years later, I'm standing in front of a chick with a mouthful of animal dicks. I'm like, you can do it! You hang in there! Relax! Breathe! Concentrate! Just look at me! And she's taking my advice! She's gagging. I'm like, you can get through this.
But it was a 2005 blog post that would earn the juiced-up Lilliput the greatest respect amongst his peers, after accusing comedic border jumper Carlos Mencia of stealing material. Rogan would cleverly dub the comedian Menstelia, a witty pun on both his surname and the word steal. You see, it sounds like Mencia, but incorporates the Hondurans' proclivity for linguistic robbery.
If someone steals a riff from a song, that shit's in the news constantly. Motherfuckers steal shit and make it on HBO. They steal shit, they put it on television. What are you saying? Listen, I know you guys don't
you're acting like a little bitch.
No, you're not saying that.
Yes.
You're agreeing with me, motherfucker.
They're not agreeing with you. They don't even know what the fuck I do. They don't even know what the fuck I do. They don't know shit. You just talk shit. It's easy to say you steal shit. I could say you steal shit. But I don't, because I'm not a little bitch.
The situation culminated in an aggressive confrontation at the Comedy Store in 2007, with Bob Levy, Bobby Lee and Ari Shaffir all in support of Rogan's anabolic crusade. It was believed Mencia had notably lifted material from burrito extremist George Lopez, and to an alpha-brained Chad like Rogan, this spick-on-spick crime was a step too far.
There, baby. I got the remote control, because I ain't gonna, when I was a kid, we didn't have remote controls. Well, not real ones anyway. We had who? Carlos! That's who we had in my house. Carlos, come here. What do you want? Change the channel. Ah!
They don't remember getting up and changing the TV. Fucking kids sitting in the house. What about us? Hey, put on channel 5.
The incident led to Rogan being expelled by his talent agent and resulted in the pocket-sized drug advocate's outright ban from performing at the Comedy Store, albeit temporarily. But to the wider comedic community, the writing was on the border wall. Like it or not, Carlos Mencia was a joke thief. And with further revelations including the possible pilfering of boss-eyed power rapist Bill Cosby's material, life for the performing migrant would never be the same again.
National TV, and he catches the ball, and he doesn't even bother to get out of the way. He just runs over everybody for a TD and turn around, and the camera's on him, and you're looking, and he says, "Hi, Mom."
He ends up in the NFL. 5 years later, he ends up in the Super Bowl. They win the Super Bowl. He gets the MVP of the Super Bowl. And when the cameras come up to him and say, "You got anything to say to the camera?" "I love you, Mom." Ah!
This represented a huge bump in optics for Rogan, and his exposing of Mencia was only further reinforced with a hilarious parody from the sticky-fingered has-beener from Matt Stone and Trey Parker of South Park. However, it has been proposed that Rogan's assault on Carlos Mencia stems from the similar and arguably superior delivery of Mencia's material. This suggestion, albeit unproven, would certainly poo-poo the notion of Joe's comedic heroism.
You're just saying that now because you're scared. No, man, it's true. I stole it, man. I took credit for it because I'm not actually funny. Come on, man. Do you know what it's like? Being a comedian but not being funny? Come on, Kanye. I just take jokes and repackage them with a Mexican accent, man.
But comedy aside, it would be impossible to discuss Joe Rogan without first delving into his credulous fascination with conspiracy theories. Joe's friendship with stocky goblin slayer Alex Jones could be traced back to the late 90s, over their narcotized distrust of governmental narratives and perpetuation of false flags, most notably September the 11th's aeronautical assault on Pete Davidson's father.
Who dares to travel in the darkest Mordor? Joe Rogan enters the central Texas heart of the Dark Empire. This is the belly of the beast!
It was also around this time that Joe struck up an intimate friendship with lovable insane person Eddie Bravo. The pair found kinship following a good old-fashioned man-on-man tussle during one of Joe's jiu-jitsu lessons. The sprightly flat earther easily got the better of Rogan, courtesy of a devastating move known simply as the Twister. And so impressed was Joe that he insisted Eddie tutor him personally in the art of Brazilian jiu-jitsu.
Like, I had been doing jiu-jitsu for 2 years, and I had no idea what the fuck you just did to me. And I was like, God damn. And you're like, I'll teach you all this shit. I was like, dude, teach me this shit. And that's how we became friends. And that's also how I started smoking pot.
Befriending the narrow-eyed conspiratard became the stimulus for Joe's crippling obsession with self-medication, and with it, a life of total THC dependency.
I thought that marijuana and all that stuff was for losers. I thought that it just made you a loser. You're just going to become unmotivated. You're not going to get anything done. You're going to be a dummy and just sit and watch TV. I'm not slowing down. I haven't slowed down at all. I work more now than I ever did before.
Same here, man.
Yeah.
I'm a busy motherfucker.
Isn't that an annoying goddamn stereotype that potheads are lazy?
Meanwhile, Joe's unsuspecting willingness to entertain all and any conspiracies saw him become an occasional guest on The Alex Jones Show, and a number of Infowarsian talking points would soon envelop Joe's otherwise limited cognitive repertoire.
Do you guys think we're going to become a Type 1 civilization by that? We're going to get off the planet and survive?
It's not going to be us, man. It's going to be the next thing. That's what I think. I think there's no more dinosaurs. Amoebas eventually become human beings, which will eventually give way to the next thing. We're going to not be in this shape forever.
So a merger with the machines?
It's very possible.
Eventually, Joe would take as much pleasure discussing false flags and cover-ups as he does in mercilessly taking the life of defenseless animals. And in both Alex Jones and Eddie Bravo, he had found himself a never-ending source of tinfoil foolery.
What was your specific point, though, dealing with the robots?
Oh, I just think it's fascinating that, we really do live in a science fiction movie. We really are on the verge of real, intelligent, artificially created life. That's like coming very, very soon. And when computers become sentient and when they develop the ability to recreate themselves and make new and more improved versions of themselves, it's going to happen so quickly.
At a time where Alex Jones was seen mostly as a barrel-chested eccentric on the fringes of media, Joe had no qualms in spending time sharing a plethora of wacky ideas with his fellow snake oil peddler. Again, more on that later.
The raw information, not sanctioned by CNN or sanctioned by Fox News or the raw you get it from people on cell phones in Bahrain, and
the era of the gatekeepers over.
I think that model doesn't work with the access to information that we have today.
Arguably Joe's most astute career move, however, came courtesy of shrapnel-faced kid groomer Anthony Cumia. Having been inspired by the Anthony-quated Z-lister's penchant for abusing alcohol in the obscure shadows of his tacky compound, Rogan wanted a piece of the action.
You don't need these fucking people anymore. You've proven that, and you are the reason, a big reason, why I started my podcast. When you were doing live in the compound from your house, singing karaoke with a machine gun, I was like, this crazy motherfucker. I was like, if he could do this, I go, I need to set up something like this in my house. And I started out with a fucking laptop. And you were the main inspiration.
In an act of laudable foresight on Joe's part, he would enjoy incredible success as an early adopter of live video podcasting. This, despite the dismal example laid out by the now impoverished domestic abuser, Tony Two Shirts. But much of Joe's inspiration undoubtedly came from the much beloved Tom Green Show, with Rogan even commending the surrealist on what he saw as a unique innovation in media.
Thank you for coming on the show.
This is the most exciting TV show I've ever been on, and I'm not bullshitting you. I think this is fucking badass. I think this whole idea that you're bypassing all the studios, you're doing this on your own, you're doing it live on the internet, I think is fucking awesome. I don't even give a fuck about normal talk shows usually. It's just an opportunity to sit down for 7 seconds and it's all filtered and censored, but I think this is fucking awesome.
The Joe Rogan Experience, often abbreviated to JRE, would showcase the verbose imp's ability to engage with just about anybody. And with the help of race-mixing clout chaser Brian Redban, the podcast was primed for wild success.
We are broadcasting live. This is my office. This is Brian Reichel, aka Redban. Hello, world.
The show would initially air on January the 6th, 2010 to streaming platform Ustream, and the early episodes featured regular guests Ari Shafir and Eddie Bravo. Brian Redban, who Joe had hired back in 2003 to help film, produce and edit videos for his website, somehow taught himself how to operate audio and video equipment, despite being really fucking stupid. And regardless to having no prior experience in the field, he would quickly become Joe's permanent audio-visual engineer, much to the delight of his delicate waifu. But despite the acclaim, this would not stop the dough-bodied goof from making basic AV mistakes on a regular basis.
Why aren't they getting this? They're not hearing the sound. Brian, they're not hearing the sound.
It just says you're on.
Huh?
You're on.
But the video's not making sound.
The video's not making sound because it's not. The program's just freaking out. They're gonna do it.
I don't know why you people tolerate this shit. I don't know why you people tolerate this shit.
Oh, Brian!
I did that on purpose.
Yeah, you totally did. Totally did. We're on, ladies and gentlemen. We're sort of on time. We try to get it right every week, but every week we fuck something up. Ladies and gentlemen, in response to your complaints about the horrible audio quality, we figured it all out, folks. We have, first of all, we have these mics that you have to hold. We're going to hold them this week. Next week, we're going to have these little clip-on things. But we have a mixer now, and we're listening to headphones, and we understand your complaints. Me? You, motherfucker. Gotcha. We only did 1 week where we didn't fuck anything up, and that was yesterday.
After just 5 months, the show had attracted its first main sponsor, the popular sex toy production company, Fleshlight. And by August 2010, the Joe Rogan Experience entered iTunes Top 100. Eventually, a core group of West Coast celebrities would unofficially form a union of closeted cokeheads, and featured the likes of Joey Diaz, Tom Segura, Eddie Bravo, Brian Callen, Tony Hinchcliffe, Ari Shaffir, and Bert Kreischer.
You're only fucking her because you're on this fucking diet? You're only fucking me because it's on the fucking diet. If you were on the fucking diet, you wouldn't be fucking me.
You should stop talking to that girl. She sounds like Eddie. Just sounded right there.
She does not sound like that.
I'm deleting shit left and right, man. I got no room. You know what I'm talking about?
Bro, I'm with you. You know what I'm saying? Between the weed, the cats, the fucking podcast life.
That's the word. The word on the street is a brownie in those gay cowboy boots.
Take a pic, yeah, whatever, something like that. If I see a purple.
Got a fucking plan.
All right.
With a reliable clan of like-minded toadies, Joe was set for a never-ending torrent of potential content, albeit from nauseating tryhards like Bert Kreischer. And with early appearances from the likes of Neil deBlack Tyson, B-movie crybaby Kevin Smith, and saggy-breasted radio boomer Greg Opie Hughes, the path to podcasting stardom was set.
And people say, space should be a peaceful place. I think that is naive. That's naive bordering on stupid.
They obviously haven't seen Battlestar Galactica.
Yeah.
By February 2014, the podcast was officially award-winning, having been gifted a Stitcher Award for Best Overall Show of 2013. By January 2015, the podcast was listened to by over 11 million people. By October 2015, it had grown to acquire 16 million downloads a month. With success came further offers of financial investment, the latest being shady nutritional supplement dealers Onnit. Onnit's flagship product was yet another in a long line of deceptive marketing practices surrounding the online supplements industry. Alpha Brain is advertised as a complete balanced nootropic, created from earth-grown ingredients to activate vital areas of neurotransmission, designed to improve brain functions such as verbal memory and executive function. A bold claim indeed. Interestingly, in accordance to the Dietary Supplement and Health Education Act's regulations, any claims relating to structure or function are allowed with no requirement for evidence, essentially meaning that providing no specific ailment or disease is mentioned, ambiguous claims of improved health or fitness is fair game.
They're all clean ingredients. Even the chemical compounds are chemicals that occur naturally, so we're not dealing with anything crazy or dangerous, and all the ingredients seem pretty purposeful and clean.
And that was the other thing. Towards the tail end of the 15 days, I definitely felt like I was able to recall and retain memory in a much more efficient and powerful way. Towards the tail end, I felt my memory was just becoming, obviously not superhuman, but more dialed in.
Aubrey Marcus, founder and chief executive officer of All Things Onnit, already had a pre-existing relationship with the podcast, courtesy of his biological mother, Kathy Shubin, wife of Fleshlight inventor Steve Shubin. The artificial vagina was Joe's first sponsor, and as like-minded muscle juicers, Joe and Aubrey soon formed what appeared to be a close friendship. But behind the red-blooded pleasantries, relations between the two were less cut and dry. It could be argued that the pill pusher's prime motivation was to sell Rogan on Alpha Brain, and as such establish brand legitimacy. After all, this was an industry rife with questionable integrity and ethics, and a celebrity boost would surely prove invaluable. Aubrey Marcus describes exactly how he convinced the gullible Rube to become an honest business partner.
A lot of people don't really probably know, and I get asked the question a lot, how did you and Joe Rogan get linked up? And so I guess I'll tell the story here. So what happened was we had a little business deal we were going to work out, and we decided to go to lunch. And I had seen Joe perform comedy before. And when you were performing comedy back then, this was like at least 10 years ago, I thought, holy shit, he sees things in a way that I like to see things. And it kind of fucking blew my mind, because that was not mainstream back then at all. I mean, you were putting ideas out that were quite a bit different than a lot of the stuff that you would hear.
I don't even remember how you contacted us. I don't remember what the method was, but all of a sudden we're having lunch, you know, and we're talking about Fleshlights.
Yeah,
it was back when you were running Fleshlight, and it was fascinating because we were like, all right, it'd be a fun podcast sponsor. We'll have a sponsor.
Admittedly, these claims against Aubrey may at first seem a little tenuous, but when diving further into both how Onnit and Alpha Brain came into existence, you begin to see exactly how supplement scams such as these are formed. As revealed in a subreddit post courtesy of Sin_Research, Aubrey's father, Michael Marcus, was a commodities trader who, in less than 20 years, managed to turn an initial $30,000 into $80 million. Interestingly, his Wikipedia page seems to not include how Michael made his millions, namely a series of shady oil and gas investments.
After the podcast, you know, he knew that I was trying to start this I had started this hangover supplement company. And he allowed me to talk about it on the podcast. So I was super grateful for that. And I was just like, what supplement would you like the most? And that's how that conversation started. Then I shipped him some samples, and then...
How long was that between when you guys came up with it? When you came
it was about 4 months.
As the son of a significantly wealthy man with a signatory interest in 5 oil and gas registrants, Aubrey was essentially a trust fund child with a great big pile of daddy's money to play with. And as one of your typical roided boneheads, a pro-fitness venture was this particular no-brainer's no-brainer. As a guy who had endured years of flogging pussy sticks to incels, hawking magic pills to unsuspecting beefcakes was a relative cakewalk, especially with the invaluable scientific efforts and approval of Aubrey's own stepmother, Dr. Janet Zand. The so-called doctor had spent 8 months of research in formulating Alpha Brain, including finding the combination of elements to raise neurotransmitter levels in the brain. But given Janet Zand's doctorly credentials stem from a 2-year acupuncture course at the California Acupuncture College, it's objectively difficult to accept any scientific validity to Alpha Brain's elaborate claims as a nutritional supplement.
These aren't like imaginary compounds that people have invented on their own and then tried to sell as snake oil. These are actual nutritional supplements. They're actually parts of food. How do you think these things got extracted? Like, they got extracted because of science. Right. Like, it's not pseudoscience, it's actual science. Like, there's only one way you're gonna get choline or vitamin B12 or any nutrient. You're gonna have to get someone who's way fucking smarter than you, figure out how to make this stuff.
Additionally, the Botox addict has a demonstrably checkered history in involving herself in similar pseudoscientific snake oil schemes, such as with skincare chiselers System 41, with the Doctor of Oriental Medicine being listed as a principal formulator, or in her involvement in advanced bionutritionals, yet another entirely non-scientific peddler of scientific-sounding natural remedies. Once again, the waspy hag lends her bogus doctorly endorsement to another of these online nutrient scams, and as an author of several books on ambiguous health and healing solutions, she makes Dr. Ed Group of InfoWars fame look like Robert fucking Koch. And with even Janet Zand's Wikipedia entry having been forcibly removed for providing information from unreliable and non-independent sources, it's a miracle anybody would ever take Alpha Brain at all seriously. Still, this would not stop Joe from relentlessly shilling the brand, both on and off his podcast.
One of the immediate things that I noticed was that I had a better recall of words. That's the frustrating thing where you're like, what is the word? What is the word? What is the word? That wasn't happening as much. And my ability to form sentences seems smoother. I've never done any studies on lucid dreaming. I've never disciplined myself to try to learn how to lucid dream. But taking Alpha Brain, I've been able to do it just in a natural way. It's 100% legit. If I go to a UFC and I don't have Alpha Brain, I panic.
Now this could very well be a blind spot for Joe. It is possible he's largely unaware of the extent of Onnit's murky origin and was simply duped by a charismatic charlatan. Besides, such schemes are fairly commonplace in the podcasting ecosystem, with DVD laundering front deep discounts an example of just how easy podcasters can be fooled. But there is also the possibility that Joe is fully aware of all of this and just doesn't care. After all, he is now a business partner in an entity worth an estimated $28 million. But the nutritional supplement industry is rife with pseudoscience, bogus claims and data manipulation, and only exists as a market for desperate fools and gullible yahoos. For Joe to willingly act as a marketing stooge for a company of such questionable business ethics, in an industry with no more moral superiority than your average timeshare pyramid scheme, would surely speak volumes for his character.
Let's talk my workout for a second. Let's talk my Omega Brain. Alpha Brain. Now, Pete Holmes turned me on to the Alpha Brain, and oddly, it completely works.
100%.
And
it's all based on science. I mean, we have double-blind, placebo-controlled studies. It's not something we invented in terms of like the actual nutrients and their response to human neurotransmitters. It's all been documented. People have known about nootropics for a long time now.
Meanwhile, the podcast would continue to grow exponentially, and with it came a number of subtle changes in Joe's persona. For example, for much of the show's history, it was generally accepted that Joe Rogan questions everything. Hence, the 6-part sci-fi series, Joe Rogan Questions Everything.
More and more catastrophic weather has been punishing people across the globe. Is it because of global warming, or is our weather being manipulated?
Should I be terrified?
Absolutely. Wow. It could lead to a viral Armageddon, a biopocalypse.
If you've got the lab, if you've got the scientists necessary, effectively you could come up with a zombie-type virus.
Whoa. For all intents and purposes, Joe was your quintessential conspiracy guy. Good friends with the likes of Eddie Bravo and Alex Jones, Rogan was never fearful of pushing the conspiratorial envelope, with even the 1969 moon landing not safe from Joe's intellectual chokehold.
You're seeing in a lot of those moon videos, looks like someone's defying physics. Like they pitch forward and they bounce back up. I think they shot a bunch of shit, and I think some of the video, if you're going into space and you're experiencing deep radiation, the Van Allen radiation belts and from the sun, dude, you can't even go through the fucking X-ray machine at the airport, the old X-ray machines with film.
The same could be said for 2001's much welcomed attack on New York City folk, with Rogan exposing himself as a 9/11 truther.
I didn't know when you had contacted me that you had included me in your, how many celebrities were there, 8 or 10?
It was the top 10 most wanted celebrities promoting harmful pseudoscience.
It's not really, I wouldn't say it's the top quarter. It was a 48-floor building, correct?
I don't know. I'm not going to argue the fraction, but you don't see the bottom of it.
Well, that's true, but it is very unusual how it falls into its base instead of falls over.
It didn't. It fell. It started to fall down straight, but then it almost destroyed 2 other buildings that it fell against.
Watch it again. Here, look at that. Yeah, that's way more than the top quarter.
Okay, it's not. You don't see the bottom.
That's almost the entire building.
No, it's not.
Okay, let's see it again. Let's see it again because we caught that in the middle. Let's see it again.
I mean, it disappears into the smoke before you can see much of what
Right,
happens.
but I think it's a bit disingenuous to say that that thing doesn't fall into its base. Look at that.
It doesn't. I mean, look,
Come on,
it's
man.
already going at an angle. Look at that. Look at that.
Okay, but it all fell to the bottom. I mean, let's look at that one
It's
again.
not going to fall to the top.
Okay, but you're being kind of silly. That thing collapsed into its base.
Well, it's just crazy building just fell. Right. Just like, I mean, I know it was definitely damaged, for sure. It was definitely on fire. But that's all it takes?
No.
All it takes is a little hole and some fire, and this thing can just fall into itself like that?
There would be lots of fires, and like there were hotel fires that lasted hours and hours and hours and hours, and buildings never fell. I don't know.
Yeah.
I have a question though.
Because there was no jet hit that building. Rather.
Right.
It's a weird. That's a weird one.
His questioning of accepted narrative even extended to the scientific and medical fields, with Joe casting doubt on the existence of the autistic spectrum. Clearly not a Ralph Retort subscriber.
There's something really wrong with this guy. There's something so wrong.
Asperger's?
Who knows? I don't know what that means. You know, I don't like all these wacky labels when it comes to mental illnesses because I'm not sure I trust them all. You know, like he's on the spectrum. Oh, is he really? What are you? Is this? Can you weigh that? Yeah. Can you put that spectrum on a scale? Can you make that guy jump in a tank of water and it reads how autistic he is? Like, I'm not sure I believe you.
But the larger his base, the safer his position seemed to be. Slowly but surely, Joe would walk back conspiracy after conspiracy, with the jacked up Uncle Fester even backpedaling on his staunch 9/11 stance.
Well, the other thing is the people that want to think that the windows blowing out are indicative of some sort of controlled demolition, or the building's caving in.
It's the floor pancaking. It pushes the air out.
When you see the images of it collapsing, what you don't see is the interior structure had collapsed previously, and there's video of that where you watch the interior cave in, and the whole inside of it, all the structure had been completely weakened, and then as it collapsed, it just all gave out. It just happened to be a shit design. They don't want to look at anything that takes away from this conspiracy. They don't want to look at anything that debunks or disproves. They just want confirmation of their initial idea that this is some big, grand conspiracy.
He would further set the tone as a born-again skeptic, following a series of interviews in which he'd appear to close himself off to the same wacky ideas he'd once openly embraced. This was evidenced during the following exchange with pop-punk alien chaser Tom DeLonge, in which the grappling slaphead appears to mock DeLonge for views he might once have shared.
When you take a guy who's like a big celebrity who's in a huge rock band like you, and you just say, hey, meet me in an airport. I'm going to tell you about a life form that we found during the Cold War because you're famous or because you know things. Why would you not ask that?
Dude, what the fuck? You tell me star system like 483? And
you know about element 115. I would want to know about Starship Enterprise coordinate 115B65 Polaris, wherever the fuck it is.
Page, I'll find it for you. Just takes me a second. There's a bunch of this shit. This is the craft, by the way. That's in, did you spell it right?
So I have to ask you, does Tom talk about UFOs all the time?
Well, you know he's not in the band no more.
Yeah, I know.
You know?
But did he always do that?
He always did. We used to get loaded and just look out the bus window for what?
Yeah, he was a trip, man. Having a conversation with him was very strange. Because part of me was like, is this guy putting me on? Like, what is happening here?
He's dead ass.
Dead ass.
Fucking dead ass.
Seemed like it. And we would look at these videos that were so clearly horseshit. And he would be like, amazing, right? And I'd be like, what?
Any attempt from guests like Nazi hunter Tim Dillon to encourage Joe to take the conspiratorial bait would be swiftly batted away, much to the frustration of many JRE diehards.
You're trying to drag me in, bro.
I'm trying to get you in. Let me tell you right now, this will get you in. It'll get you in.
I don't have that kind of time for
Did you know that George H.W. Bush called the and he was not at all a lightweight. He was a serious operator, and he was going in there to kind of clean up and transition them into a new era. I'm telling you.
I'm already out.
You're
already
out?
Done. Yeah.
How are you out?
I can't listen to that.
It's good. It's great, though.
It's just, and there's no rest. There's no peace.
I know.
There's no living in the moment. It's
Do you
like
think
a
you get to
constant
a
distraction.
certain point, you go, I just don't even want to know.
Rather unsurprisingly, this personality shift to a more establishment-friendly approach happened to coincide with Joe's love affair with the international collective of Talmudian faggots, or better known as the intellectual dark web.
How weird is this whole association to you? Because it's weird to me.
The IDW?
Yeah, the IDW.
Yeah,
just that.
Well, of course,
intellectual dark web.
I don't know what the hell it is. It's like I've been trying to puzzle it out. I mean, I think what it is a loose collection of early adopters of a revolutionary technology. That's what it looks like to me. And we found each other because we're all doing the same thing.
But it's also a bunch of people that are honest intellectually.
Joe's inclusion in the group came courtesy of fence-sitting LGBTarian Dave Rubin, joining such cognitive titans as Eric Weinstein, Ben Shapiro, Jordan Peterson, and Sam Harris. It was generally felt that the responsibility of meeting the big-brained expectations of his intellectual superiors weighed heavily on Joe's shoulders, and a noticeable reining in of aluminium foil pursuits soon followed. But the biggest crime here is that Joe allowed himself to see these people as peers, only to be manipulated by the pseudo-intellectual Zionists in platforming a series of philosophical and socio-political discussions he's neither mentally or ideologically capable of contributing towards. He was, after all, their useful idiot.
they can't believe we all freaking created something.
Well,
and they hate
I'm
creation
weirded out
too.
that we're all in a group. I'm weirded out that we're in a super
I've
boy
never
band.
been in a group before.
Me and Shapiro were joking around about it, but we're like the super friends.
Yeah.
Like, what is this?
This
We're
is
like,
the weirdest Avengers ever.
Joe's political rhetoric also seemed to vary wildly, with the leg-sweeping comedian seemingly bending to the ideological whims of whoever sat opposite him. For a period in the run-up to and following the 2016 election, Rogan would time and time again roll out the welcome mat to far-right provocateurs such as chinless-fed Gavin McInnes and penniless pederast Milo Yiannopoulos.
You know, if I'm like the scariest opponent, you know, that they have, they got real problems.
Well, you are because of what we highlighted earlier. They can't dismiss you
but
as
I was
easily.
kind of semi-joking with all that shit. It's
kind
like, you know,
of semi-joking, but I'm not kinda.
No, but like,
I'm
bring your A game and make your argument, for
Yes,
God's sake. And
but-
why is it that for the last 30 years they have been incapable or unwilling of actually making an argument, and instead they do everything they can to simply get the speaker out of the public eye?
Well, because they exist in an echo chamber.
But with the wild expansion of his profile following the podcast's continued success, came a barrage of accusations from the left of Joe's platforming of so-called alt-right personalities. In typical Roganian fashion, rather than form a logical defence for showcasing the full spectrum of political and ideological debate, Joe would instead bend the knee, and once again course correct.
The subject matter is so dangerous now. Like, everything that used to be funny. I watched Ace Ventura, Pet Detective, with my kids, and I did not remember how transphobic that movie is.
It is fairly accepted in JRE circles that Joe suffers from a distinct lack of ideological footing, instead choosing to adopt the socio-political energy of his guests both left and right. It's as though his ever-changing value system stems from a series of course corrections as a result of external criticism or feedback, as opposed to deeply considered beliefs and fundamental moral positions.
Ladies and gentlemen, I retired the word faggot from my vernacular.
Sorry to hear that, Joe.
I gave it up. When there's a word that confuses a lot of people and pisses people off, and that's not your intent, then really rationally and logically you have to kind of accept that you have an ineffective word. That word's not that good. That word means too many different things. It means, to some people, it means you hate gay people. And that is the furthest possible thing from the truth.
His defenders will simply state this is a result of his role as an impartial interviewer. However, this does not explain such comments as the following Zionist tirade on the merits of progressive globalism.
So we integrated, right? Obviously, there's no difference between us other than culture and language, right? But we still have this crazy line. Like, you can't come over and you guys are fucked. Listen. You were born into a worse system than us. We can't let you over here.
Right.
I know you want to get better, but fuck off.
Fuck you.
Really, what it should be is there should be no Mexico. There should be no United States. There
Right.
should be no Canada. There should be the planet Earth.
Right.
That's really what it should be.
These stand in stark opposition to a wide number of Joe's views during countless appearances with conservative-leaning personalities, after which Rogan himself would be labelled an alt-right sympathiser. It could be that he's simply not invested enough in the cultural or political sphere to plant his flag in any particular camp. It could also be that Rogan is simply offering a platform for debate to take place, and any argumental inconsistencies on his part are a result of the same learning pursuit we all partake in. It could even be that Rogan is simply a cave-brained retard, incapable of independent thought. But like it or not, Joe has an incredibly large and powerful platform, and ultimately is responsible for the ideas he espouses. He should at least attempt to maintain a somewhat consistent ideological position, rather than to have his views so easily moulded by a succession of impassioned guests.
The Democrats are going to try and replicate that strategy and be like, we just need to make our base go apeshit crazy, rather than running someone that can win the center.
I see where you're going, but I think that this is maybe my liberal bias, but I think that people on the left wouldn't fall for that the same way people on the right would.
However, the pint-sized choker's positional ambiguity would come to a screeching halt the minute his incontestable defense of marijuana use was questioned.
It's one of the biggest examples. People say, why do you drone on about pot all the time? It's because these things like that are one of the biggest examples of just how egregious making it illegal is. It's one of the most amazing plants we've ever discovered. You can make your house out of it. You can fucking eat at it. You can get high with it. You can make your clothes with it. We know this is innocuous. Like I just hit it. We're having a conversation. There's no problems. This is not some devil weed. It's not going to ruin lives. I pay taxes. I have a family. Everything's fine. I wake up when the alarm goes off. It's all, we're being fed bullshit.
As a rabid advocate of weed legalization, his unhinged passion for the plant would often cause some of JRE's more uncomfortable moments.
It's amazing. It's amazing. Do that.
Such was his self-medicated fanaticism that any mention from guests as to the potential pitfalls of marijuana use was more often than not met with frantic rage.
You shouldn't do whippets.
The argument against Ginsburg on the Supreme Court because he
that
smoked a joint was he was setting a bad example for those kids.
But it's a
who
bad.
There are demonstrable harms to smoking pot.
But it's not true because nothing has ever been shown. And all these, look, there's a big article that just came out recently. The DEA spent 4 decades suppressing information about the positive benefits of marijuana. All of the positive effects of marijuana, as far as shrinking tumors, as far as actually improving people that have had traumatic brain injuries. There's a lot of.
I'm for pot. I smoke pot.
But why are you using Ginsburg as an example?
No, I'm not using Ginsburg as an example. I'm saying that you just said that weight around politicians, it sets a bad example.
We weren't talking about weight. We were talking about cigarettes.
Oh, smoking
about
sets a
Obama.
bad example for the kids, right? Well, pot use, that was the argument against Ginsburg.
Right, but
it's
based on ignorance. It's not based on ignorance when you're talking about cigarettes. Cigarettes actually do kill you.
But
cigarettes kill 500,000 people every year.
Right. No, cigarettes are the much greater evil. I'm a pothead.
Marijuana's not evil. But it's just not evil.
No,
saying marijuana is evil is like saying hammers are evil.
I'm not saying marijuana is evil. I'm not saying marijuana is evil. There are studies and sound science that shows that marijuana on the developing adolescent brain, we could look it up right now.
Okay, the developing adolescent brain.
I know, but this is the argument about whether it's a good example. Who are we talking about when we say something's a bad example? We're talking about the kiddies.
Even close friend and sanctimonious cuckold Bill the Coal Burner found himself at the wrong end of Rogan's frenzy, following the mere suggestion the mind-altering drug just might be a little addictive.
I'm not anti-weed. I'm just saying stop acting like it's not addicting. Like this, that it's just like alcohol.
Well, no, it's not just like alcohol, but it can be addictive psychologically.
Like, it annoys me that on intervention they've never had just some pothead who's been fucking high since he's 16 and he's still watching like fucking the Hanna-Barbera hour, and you know,
because it doesn't compare to the meth guy who's pulling his face off with his fingernails.
The stark difference in how animated the bong-puffing midget would appear when advocating weed use compared to, well, anything that actually matters, was again displayed during his discussion with threat-shredding gun advocate Ted Nugent.
I mean, I've studied the results of legalization for recreational use in Colorado and how the highway fatalities and accidents have increased.
But you know what else has increased? The population. In proportion to
so
the
it causes
accidents.
breeding?
It causes more people there. More people are there. So you're having more accidents there.
Right.
The problem is there's a boom of population. Also a boom in the economy, a boom in the real estate. The real estate's taking off. Yeah, there's a lot of losers there too.
But it was a conversation with mug-peddling speed junkie Steven Crowder that truly exposed Rogan's rampant hypersensitivities towards his precious plant.
If you had to if you go, God damn it, maybe I went too far down this road. If I could just relax one aspect of my dialogue, what would it be? Me, it would be my pipe smoking.
Your pipe smoking? I probably wouldn't talk about the marijuana issue. I wouldn't care. Because here's the thing, I don't care about it.
One way or the other?
But my issue with it is when, and we saw this in Montreal, I talked about it when people lie about it and they're dishonest with their voting constituency.
Like how so?
Well, saying, it's medicine for A, B, C, or D. It may be medicine for A, but not for B, C, or D.
Well, what are the B, C's, and D's?
Well,
what are the things that's not medicine
an example.
for?
Well, you're asking me what I wouldn't talk about, and not asking me to defend it. My point is, I don't really care about it.
Despite Crowder stating on numerous occasions to not really care about the subject, Rogan remained focused on grilling the hackneyed sketch faggot, blindsiding him with Red Band replacement Jamie's distinctive ability to pull that shit up.
No, it's not entirely harmless.
Well,
it's not without consequences.
Well, consequences based on what?
And I've given you so much leeway there on that one.
How have you? Consequences
it literally
based on
started
what?
from me saying I probably couldn't care less about this out of all the other issues that we discuss. and you lasered in on that and go, where do we disagree
Because
on
it's
this?
a
You're
huge
looking for an
blind spot.
argument. I will ask this.
I'm trying to say, what are the consequences of it?
You come on my show. I would love to, and have a discussion about it in real time. I think so. Well, last time on the show, you said you do the show
right now. You're in front of me right now. Why do I have to
we're
come
not
on
having
your
a conversation, you and I, right now.
We would definitely have a conversation
bring
for
up sources.
hours. Oh, that's not good to read
It's
sources.
not fair. It's not fair to have two people.
What's fair?
Just like before you said,
no
you think
data?
of Amy. You
Should
think
we
of
be
Amy,
in a room with no internet?
You think if Amy and I ganged up on you, think you would have done well in that argument? Come on, man. If that study's right,
then you were wrong, right?
I could be wrong.
You were wrong, right? When you were just spouting it out. So we proved that in Colorado you were wrong.
You didn't
and
prove.
if that study is true, well,
you didn't prove. You said if that's here's what you do. If
let's
that study,
pull that up again. Figure out what caused the Colorado
and then you say interruption.
study.
I asked one question, and then you get a paragraph.
You'd like doing this, don't you?
This was seen as a downright cowardly ambush on a hapless Crowder, who was not exactly prepared for or interested in a debate on weed advocacy. The exchange quickly became a display of passive-aggressive alpha mailing, with Joe seemingly unable to resist attacking the eye-gougingly unfunny chunk of conserver LARPing shit.
This is where I was saying
hold on, don't interrupt me, you fuck. Because, hold on, stop.
No, hold on a second. This is
you
because you just
interrupt way too much. You need to stop.
You talk
hold
in
on
paragraphs.
A second. No.
Again, my point is I don't care about it.
Yeah, you do.
No, I really don't.
You don't care about people dying? You son of a bitch.
You get to think about it, and your eyes light up, and all of a sudden, now of the chemical compounds.
Hold on, fuckface. I don't care about your website, you fuck.
Really? And that's
we
what a lot
already
of people
proved you're full of shit about Colorado and traffic deaths. Should we go and fuck you up with this too?
Yeah. It's not a news article.
Right. Hold on, please.
That's commentary.
Hold on, but fine. Is there a problem when two people are correct and you're incorrect? Does that bother you? What evidence? You haven't given me shit.
I've given you the argument.
What argument?
You're continuing. I'm saying, fine. Let's say there's no causation. Let's say that wasn't backed up well enough. Let's give you that argument.
Okay. What's this, Jamie?
And
There's
we're back
also
to
some
it,
evidence
and we're
that
back to
vaccine doesn't cure things, you fuck. It prevents you from getting polio.
There's no jacking back and forth.
Not at all.
You're the one jacking back and forth.
Oh, sweetie. You know that's
Don't
not
call me
true.
sweetie.
And Crowder was hardly alone at the receiving end of Joe's aggressive chest bumping, with spaghetti boomer Nick DiPaolo involved in one of the strangest JRE episodes to date. In a severely uncomfortable 2 hours of podcasting, Joe would give the comedian an unnecessarily hard time for the most pointless of moronic interjections and boneheaded assertions.
To talk about building a tower in Moscow is not illegal, or to have business. And what did he lie about specifically?
Well, there's a lot.
Like what?
We could pull it up. Let's find out all the things.
What do you got to go to salon.com?
No, you can go to a million different websites.
Well, I know.
Okay,
but which
what
ones
do you
are
think
telling
is a good
we just established
website?
that the fucking social media tilts left. So
yes, social media does. We're not talking about pulling up social media pages.
What are you pulling up?
I don't know.
Washington Post.
I'm not a Trump scholar.
Perhaps the most ludicrous of these came in the form of a dishonest Rogan questioning what possible reason the establishment's media would have to lie.
I don't know. Let's see. It says Washington Post, who they hate.
Who hates
Jeff Bezos.
Trump.
Yeah.
Who absolutely
said
hates
the president made
But that's my point.
1,989 such claims in 2018. By the last day of 2018.
Yeah, you're going to the Washington Post. That's my point.
But let's see what it says. I mean, they can't lie. The total figure has risen to 7,600. So you think they just made up all these lies?
Of course, not all of them, I'm sure. But you could go back with Hillary and fucking count. You could go to Fox News and pull up an article of how many times Hillary was inaccurate.
To so blatantly assert something so demonstrably ignorant is one thing, but when it stands in direct opposition to things Joe has literally said on more than one occasion, accusations of disingenuousness are not exactly wide of the mark.
Do you know what a whataboutism is?
A whataboutism?
Yeah, when someone talks about something and instead of refuting it with facts, they go, yeah, well, what about Hillary? What about Bill? Bill did it too. What about this? What about that?
You're
that's
gonna tell me
whataboutism.
But who's saying that's a lie?
Well, let's see. Let's see. Let's see what it says. Jesus Christ, you're so defensive. It's like, do you work for the organization?
No, I don't. But you're putting.
I'm saying
you're using the Washington Post.
No, this isn't the Washington Post.
Well, what is it?
This is
the
NBC.
Independent. Oh, the NBC. Okay, NBC.
These logical double standards would form a fundamental part of Joe Rogan's character profile. For example, Joe has carved a career from the bow-hunted carcass of pro-fitness, nutrition, and healthy living, encouraging obese incels to take to the weights and treadmills and abandon bad dietary choices. Yet Joe is clearly a TRT addict and steroid abuser. One is hardly breaking physical and psychological barriers, pumped full of testosterone and performance enhancers.
Fuck it. They work. There's a reason why they're banned from sports.
You didn't even hesitate. You go, why wouldn't you, with a puzzled look in your face?
Whenever someone tells me, well, man, at 55 years of age, you really think it's a good idea to take steroids? Yes, that's the perfect time.
Yeah, because the alternative is dying.
Well, also, you only have like 20 years left anyway. Well, testosterone replacement and hormone replacement therapy is there's a real science to it. The idea is you don't take too much. You take what you would have in your body if you were a younger man. That's what you do. And people are like, well, you're not a younger man anymore. Duh. Like, people just want you to wither away and die.
So you've juiced.
I take testosterone replacement therapy, and I've done it for almost 10 years. What is it, 49? Yeah, 39.
And these double standards quickly invaded his professional life too. Rather astonishingly, the UFC poster boy's close relationship to repeated drug cheat John Jones saw the 4-foot meatloaf frequently defend Jones's constant abuse of MMA's doping rules.
What's going on with the snitching stuff?
I don't know. They offered him a more lenient sentence if he was willing to snitch, and he goes, fuck.
And scurrying his tiny rhetoric also seemed to vary wildly, with the leg-sweeping comedians and scurrying his tiny attacking the eye-gougingly unfunny chunk of conserver LARPing shit.
This is where I was.
Hold on, don't interrupt me, you fuck.
See,
John Jones' situation is very tricky because he's so good and he's so dominant that people just assume that he's been doing something his whole career. It's clear. One thing is clear from his test is that whatever he took was a tiny trace amount, and it must have